Hello my friend and welcome to my channel Faisal Azib. I hope that you are well. Let's now explore some more features of the for loop and also create somewhat more useful example. And one of the most used applications for loops is to loop through arrays. So let's get back the array that we are using before. I mean Faisal array. Oops, where is it? I will just take it. Faisal array. Yeah, this one. So we will copy this array. Tag. Good. I will just now rename the variable to Faisal, just Faisal. So go to this video about introduction to object and then grab this Faisal array, and maybe you didn't write it back then, but then you can just write it right now. Okay? And so now we can use a for loop to loop through this array. And let's say for now that we want to individually log every element of the array to the console. So very simple. All we want to do is to log this 5 element here. So let's write a for loop, and as always, we start with the counter, okay? And now a traditional counter variable name has been e, okay, for a long time. And so let's use that here as well. So just I, and this time we need to start it at 0. And that's because the array is 0 based when it comes to reading element out of the array. Remember. And this will make sense once we actually write the code of this loop. Let's now actually skip the condition for now. So we are gonna deal with that a little bit later. And so now updating the counter is gonna work exactly the same as before. So since we want to log all of the elements, we need to update the counter variable simply by 1. And so again, we use plus plus. Okay? Good. And now let's write for loop here itself. So console.log. And remember, all we want to log to the console is each element of the array. And so without a loop, we would write that like this. Faisal, after this, 0. Right? And then let's do that outside. Put it here. Oops. Sorry. To see. And now I will of course copy this one 4 times to get the 5 elements. So 1, 2, 3 and 4. Good. Okay. All right. So let's comment it out. It's just to understand what I want to do. But this is helpful to see what kind of code we want to achieve. Of course, we can do it when it is small. When it's big, we can't write it, of course. So again, we want to start at Faisal 0, which is the first element. Faisal 1 is this one, then 2, 3, and 4. And so that's the reason why we start the counter at 0, because that's the first element that we want to get. It is Faisal 0. And so here, instead of hard coding to 0, of course, so we copy because I move it. We are going to use our counter variable. So, and that's here, e, so simple. And now, the trickiest part here is the condition. And so, that's why we left it for the end, but now we need to actually tackle it. So for how long do we want to keep this loop running? Well, it should run when E is 0, right? It should also run when it is 1, 2, 3, and 4, because 4 is the last element. But when it is 5, it is no longer run, right? And that's because Faisal at 5 doesn't exist. So let's just write it here. Faisal of 5, just comment it, doesn't exist, right? And so that means that the e counter variable should always stay below 5. So let's write that here. So e less than 5. Okay? So I should stay below 5. And so with this, as soon as the counter variable is updated to 5, then the next iteration of the loop will not run anymore. So let's try this. Good. We get log of each of the elements in the array. So all the 5 of them, great. But there is actually still one problem with this, which is that we hard-coded the length of the array here with 5. So let's now say that we add another element. Let's say just chocolate. Okay? Like this. Oops. Chocolate. And so if we try this now, do you think that true will be looked here or no? Of this chocolate? Let's say. Of course, it will not. Because of course, we are still telling JavaScript that I should stay below 5. And so it will not print the array at position number 5, which does not exist. So now we do have Faisal at position 5, right? And so the solution to this is to not hard code the value here, but to compute this value. So basically, to get it from JavaScript itself. And how we can get this number? Well, actually this is a 5 is simply the length of the array, right? Not of this one anymore. Okay? So I will delete this one. Not needed. But of the original one. So this array has a length of 5. And so 5 is exactly the number that we put here. And we can simply replace the hard-coded value with dynamically calculated one. And that's Faisal dot length. So simple. So let's try that. Good. It still works. And if I now go back to adding something else like chocolate or true, what you want. Let's do chocolate again. Chocolate, and I will add true variable, another variable, no problem. True, like this. Good, do you see? It will now be 7, and of course we get always the result of our array. Let's now also log something else here. Let's say the type of variable. So type here, type of Faisal, the same thing, Faisal E. And I don't need chocolate now because I have string, so it does not matter. I'll just keep another type of variable, boolean. Okay? And I hope that this part here makes sense, of course. So the fact that we are using the counter variable here to retrieve all the elements of the array. Okay, let's see the result. Now we have string, string, number, string, object, and boolean. So remember, how I say that an array is in fact an object, and here we have the proof of that. Do you see? Do you see? So I hope that this logic here made sense. And so this is, in a nutshell, how we loop array using the for loop. Now, what we did here was only to read values from the array. But now let's also at the same time create a new array which will contain this type of each of the element. Okay? So basically this one. So again, what I want to do now is to create a new array which will contain all the type for all this element. And if that sounds a little bit useless, then just keep in mind that these are all just educational exercise. So I designed them to show you how these different features of the language work. So in the real world, we would probably not create an array with the type of variable, but this is excellent to show you how to create a new array based on the values of one original array. So to do that, we start by creating a new empty array outside of the loop, and let's do that here. After this one, so I will call this one type. Okay? And now I think this is something we didn't do before, which is to simply create an empty array. And all we have to do is to basically create an array with the usual syntax, but without any element inside of it. So like this. And so now we have to go here to the same loop because this new array type will be based on the facial array. So it's gonna have the same length. And so we can use the exact same loop that we used to read data from the facial loop also to construct this new type array. So let's say types at position E should equal to type of facial at position E. Okay, like this. And remember that this works because we can essentially do this. So we could do it again without the loop, okay, and say type 0 equal string. Okay, you can do this, no problem. So this would work, right? And so of course it also works with the index number here dynamically. And so that's exactly what we are doing here in the exact same way as we read data from the facial array. Okay? So we delete this one just to explain you. So in iteration 0, we will have type 0 equals type of facial 0. Then in next iteration, we will have type 1 equal type of facial 1. And then 2, 3, 4, and 5. Alright. So just to see if that works, let's then log to the console outside the loop. I will print the right type. This newly created, or to be more accurate, this newly filled array. So let's see. And indeed, now we get this array, which has exactly the type that we can see here as well. So string, string, etc. until Boolean. So this 6, then we also have here, which means that we achieved our goal here. Now, this is just one way of filling an array, yeah? And let me write that down here. Filling types array. Okay? And here we do basically reading from facial array. Reading from facial array. But this is just one way of doing it. So let's comment out this one and do it in another way. And do you remember how to add an element to an array in another way? Where we could use the push method, right? So that will be type dot push. Okay? And remember that push adds a new element to the end of the array. And so here we now need to pass in the element that we do want to add it on the array. And so that's again type of Faisal at position E. So simple. So of the current num counter. And so if we try this now again, be sure we clean, we should get the same. And it is important that we add the new element to the end of the array and not to the beginning. So we really need to use push here and not unshift. So I think that this way of doing it here is actually a little bit cleaner. But if you prefer the first way here, is actually a little bit cleaner also. Okay? Then of course you can just use it if you want, no problem. But what matters here is that we really understood the logic of how to construct all the different parts of this for loop in order to loop the array. So it starts the counter being 0 because that's the first element of the array. And then this condition here, which specifies that the current index always need to stay below the length of the array that we are looping through. And then in the loop itself, we always get the current element using the current counter, which is gonna go from 0 to the length of the array, minus 1 basically. Okay? So now let's make sure we really get this. Let's try another maybe more practical example. So let's go back to having an array of birth years. So I will write it here. Const years equal, for example, 5, this and like this and like this. Good. And now what we want to do is to calculate the age for all these 4 birth years here. And we want to store them in new array. Okay? And that's very common type of operation, which we actually already did before, but without using loops. Now let's create another and again an empty array, which then holds the years. So I call this array age. And so what we are going to do now is to loop through years and then fill up this age array. So for, and then once more, let's define the counter at 0. Oops. For the same reason that we did it before. And it is not a problem that this counter variable here has exactly the same name. Then the condition is also going to be the same. So, and actually, the whole loop always kind of looks the same when the loop over array. Okay? Less than years dot length. So now here the difference is that it is of course years dot length. Okay, and now of course I will add the counter plus plus. Now we open our code. Good. And now what we need to do is to calculate the age of the current year. So that's gonna be 2021 minus. So as always, that's the year that we are currently in. Let's say that minus the current birth here. So here we do what we do. How do we do that? So we say years, okay, at the loop current to position, it is E. So simple, okay. So that's nothing new at this moment. I hope now at this point. So we have this calculation now, and now we want to add it to this new empty array. So we say we want to push it to that array. And so we use the push method to do that. So age dot push, and we put this one. Oops. Like this. And so this is the value that we want to push into this empty array. And that's actually it. So let's check it out on the console. This array variable, age. So let's see now. And here we go. We cannot do an operation between simple value and an array. So that I showed you earlier, right? We cannot do 2021 minus the years array. Okay? So what I mean, we cannot do 2000 like this minus like this. Okay? It's nonsense. So that will just give us not a number. And so here in this loop, we basically did it individually. So we did two calculations, one by one. In each iteration of the loop, we calculated 2021 minus this year, and then added it to the first position in the age array. Then we did 2021 minus this year, and put it at the end of the age array again. We continue until we finish with the array. So that is very, very useful and important application of the for loop. And now to finish, let's learn about two important statements for loops. And that's the continue and to break statement. So let's just let me write them here. Continue and break. And let's start with continue. So continue is to exit the current iteration of the loop and continue to the next one. On the other hand, break is used to completely terminate the whole loop. So let's see two quick examples for that. And let's go back to actually this loop that we had here. So where we looped this Faisal array. So I will just copy this code. Okay. Now maybe I can delete this one. I don't need a comment. And this one not needed because we have done it before. No problem. Oops. Good. Because we already learned how to loop through the array. And now, I am just interested in showing you how to continue and to break work. So let me show you how to do that. And now let's say that for some reason we only want to print elements to the array that are strings. And the continue statement is perfect for this. Because again, with continue, we can exit the current iteration of the loop. So what we can do here is to say if the type of the current element, so of Faisal E, I write it, type of, let's copy this one, type of Faisal E, okay. If this type, it is not a string, so not equal to string, like this. Then continue like this. Okay? And so that's how we write the continue statement. It is really just this continue keyword. Okay? It's very, very important. But when I write this, when I do this, I will do it before the console log. I mean here. Instead, I will add it to I will print it, and I don't want to do it. I will just print the variable that has type of string. So again, what we want to do here is to only log string to the console, which means that everything else should basically be skipped. And that's what we do here. So we say if the type of the current element, so that's this one here. So if the type of the current element is not a string, then continue. Which again means that the current iteration of the loop is excited, and then the next one starts immediately. So let's just write some other note here to the console, just to so we know that we are doing here, like all the string. Okay, because otherwise the output here is gonna start to look a little bit confusing. Console.log. So only strings, something like this. But anyway, let's set this now. Indeed, we only get string now. Do you see? So I just maybe write this one here to be more clear, not inside the loop. I put it here. As you can see, we have only string. So these three are string, and all the other ones are not string. So this number, this array, and this boolean, so they will now get be printed because you basically skip them. For example, that 35 here, so the third element does have to type number here, right? So it is not string, and so this here will be true because, of course, number is different than string, and so this is true. And so this code here, continue will run, and what continue will do is that it will immediately exit the current iteration. And so this line of code will not be executed in the current iteration. It will not even be reached. Okay? And now finally, let me just show you how break works. And remember that what break does is to completely terminate the whole loop. So not just the current iteration. So what we want to do now is to log no other element after we found a number. So essentially, after a number is found, which will be this 35, nothing else should be printed. Okay, so let's do that. And how to do that? It will again, I will copy this loop. Okay. And here I will just write maybe stop to number. Stop to number. So let's translate the logic that we just said into the code. Or just make not stop. Write break with number. I think it's more clear. Break with number. More clear like this. So as soon as number is found, we want to break the loop. So our if condition here should be type of Faisal E, so the current element, if it is equal to number here. Okay, number. And so now that's number, then what we do, break. Okay, let's see the result now. Indeed, that's exactly what we want. Okay? So after the first number is found, which is 35, nothing else is printed. So in this iteration, where the number is found, not even this line of code is printed anymore. And then the loop is terminated completely. Alright. Now, this may not sound very practical, but believe me, there are some important use cases for continue and break. It is just hard to create some small and isolated code example to show you just how useful they can be. But anyway, I wanted to let you know that continue and break exist. But the most important takeaway from this video is definitely to understand how we can loop through array using this kind of logic here. Okay? So this one here is really important that you understand this snippet of code. Thank you so much, brothers and sisters, to follow this course until this moment. Practice, always practice. Subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram. I tell you goodbye. Wassalamu alaikum wa barakatuh.